Dr. Judy here, Dr. Judy WTF. And tonight's topic I'm going to read because sometimes I create these topics and they're so lengthy and titles. So here it is: Inappropriate Family Role Modeling of Sexuality and the Impact of School on School Children. So, how does family play a role in the way they model sexuality in the home, and what impact does that have on the children? And as usual, my topics are influenced by what flows through my treatment room. And lately, unfortunately, there have been incidents of little children being inappropriate in school with each other, and children experiencing PTSD, bullying from this, and then the law gets involved, Child Protective Services gets involved, the parents are upset, the school system is upset, and nobody really knows what to do and why this is happening. So I want to go after the big why is this happening? Why are there little children from kindergarten through grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then into high school, of course, um, performing sexual acts in the bathroom, in locker rooms, in hallways, in the playground, anywhere? Why are these children acting out so much on each other? And how come the school is not providing a safe enough environment for children so that they don't have to worry about things like this? So with that said, let's go to the mind map because we're going to mind map it. And I want to go to the cause. So what is the cause? How does role modeling occur? Well, a couple of ways. Number one, you look at your peers as role models. You look at your teachers as role models. You look at other adults as role models. Primarily, you look to your parents as role models. And if they're inappropriate with their sexuality, you could pretty much be assured that the children are going to copycat this behavior. So if you look at panel number one, the light represents the best of the child, the best of the parent, the best of the best of everyone. And those speckles represent the wounds of childhood. And in this particular case, we're going to focus on the wound of sexual abuse or sexual inappropriateness or poor sexual role modeling, anything that affects a child and blueprints them to then act out this behavior on other peers. So if you look at panel one, we can see that our life runs interference by our childhood wounds. That's pretty clear as a metaphor in the way that I've depicted panel number one. And you can notice that when these childhood wounds impact us, they also cause reactions. So let's move to panel two and talk about the amygdala. So the amygdala is the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn part of the brain. It is reactive. It's where PTSD develops. It's where complex PTSD resides when childhood wounds are unresolved and carry onward into adulthood. So these reactions then become points of anxiety, points of being triggered by environmental cues, and so on. And then panel three represents the encoding of what happens as a result of these childhood wounds. And in this case, the main encoding is that I am not safe. So if a child goes to a bathroom and gets bullied into performing some sort of sexual act, and then on top of that threatened, and I've heard many different forms of threats, and I'll go over some of them. But if they then experience this inappropriate sexual, lewd, lascivious conduct from peer to peer. I'm talking about peer to peer, not even talking about adult to child. Then they encode something into their psyche, something like, I am not safe, the world is not safe, this is scary, this is overwhelming. I don't, they get an aversion, basically. And one of the ways that aversions work is that when they're averse to the situation, they will pair that aversion with the environment. So, for example, I've seen cases where little children have anxiety going to the bathroom at school. Of course they do, because that's where the event took place. Other children may experience anxiety just by being dropped off at the school, uh, and they may experience more clingy behaviors, and then it gets into nightmares and scary images and flashbacks and all kinds of PTSD responses that are oftentimes very, very hard, not only on the child, but hard on the parents, because parents will feel horrible that they allow this to happen to their child. Now, the interesting thing that I'm finding as of late is that the school system, who's ultimately responsible for keeping the children safe, are acting very, very defensive about this kind of stuff. So instead of saying, wow, I'm so sorry this happened, we will take every precaution to make sure it doesn't happen again, we will accept full responsibility for this, they don't. They don't. Oftentimes they'll sweep it under the rug. They'll make it the fault of somebody else. They'll deny everything because, of course, they don't want to get sued. And there's the operative term. They don't want to get sued. So what is the school to do? Well, what is the school to do? Number one, I've always wanted to make sure that the mind map system was taught in the school system. I haven't been very successful because that's a lot of red tape. And if anybody's interested, please contact me, because I think that child education is really, really important. Age appropriate psychoeducation that can educate children and help them prevent these occurrences, or at least identify them and report them immediately. Ways children can put up boundaries, feel safe about reporting these incidences to the teacher, principal, their parents, school counselor, whoever, and really, really get the support around them that they need to feel protected and to feel supported if this kind of thing goes on in the school system. So let's go back over panel 1, 2, 3. So the event could be the peer-to-peer molestation, and then the reaction could be the PTSD, and then the encoding could be, I'm not safe in the world, or school is scary, or bathrooms are scary, or some sort of a phobia. Now, I'm going to go a little bit deeper than that and go back to the wound, because as some of you know, I like to address the cause. So why are these children acting out? So what's going on in the household, and what's going on in the environment, what's going on in social media? Sure, we can blame social media, and we can blame the images that are flowing through our cell phones and through all of our electronics. And yes, that's impactful. However, it's up to the parent, of course, to control those things, monitor those things. And I'm going to address parents who are inappropriate sexually in their own households, parents that have loose boundaries, parents who think drug, sex, and rock and roll are fun things to do in front of their children. We're talking about parents who know no boundaries and think it's funny to expose their children to people grinding on each other, or people kissing each other, or I'm not talking about a peck on the cheek and affection. I'm talking about overstimulation. any kind of overstimulation is difficult for children to process because they already have a lot of stimulation going on. And if they're exposed to some sort of a sexual stimulation in the family, in social media, out there in the world, especially in the family, they don't know how to metabolize these feelings because, of course, they're going to be stimulated and provoked by this, but because they're not age appropriate for engaging in safe sex and sex that is bonding and meaningful and so on, the sexual energy is inappropriately displaced onto other people. And then those other people get caught up in the sexual acts. And one of the things that's somewhat, I won't say popular because I don't know the statistics, but now children are forming these little kissing clubs or sex clubs or so on, and they think it's really, really cool to touch each other and so on and so forth. And then the child is horrified, and the parents are more horrified, and the schools are oftentimes just plain old defensive. So let's move on with this mind map because it's really revealing. So what happens here is panel number 4. Panel number 4 is my chaos panel. So you see the bonds represent the bonds of trust being broken. So if you're going to step into your school and you have no trust for the system, you have no trust that it's a safe environment, then you're going to feel, as the image shows, upside down. It's an upside down world. There's no safety. There are no rules. There are no roles. There's no east, west, north, south. Everything is hazy. Everything is unclear. It's toxic, and people just don't know how to behave. So they basically just fall into chaos, as you can see by the little people falling into the ozone, outer space. So what happens after chaos, because who wants to be in chaos, is people roll into defense mechanisms, and that's what panel number 5 is. So how do you defend against anxiety? How do you defend against unsafety? How do you defend against threats? How do you defend against systems gone wrong, unsafe systems? Well, for one common defense mechanism, and I mentioned it earlier, is to go from your reactions, which is the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and convert reactions into actual phobias or avoidant responses. So now the child has a phobia against the bathroom. Why? Because that's where the violation occurred. Or they have a phobia against going into the locker room, or they have a phobia against hanging out in the schoolyard. Wherever these events occurred, get associated with the trauma. And once I think we have a question. Yeah, I'm ready for a question.
Okay, well, we have a question, and it's mostly about not inside. It sounds like it's not inside of a family, but observing. So it says, how does exposure to inappropriate sexual behavior within the family influence self-esteem and identity? And how do you recognize that from outside of a family unit?
So how say that again so I get the question really clear in my
head. Let me see. There it is. How does exposure to inappropriate sexual behavior within the family influence a child's self-esteem and identity development? And then it says, and how do you identify it if you're not in that family unit? Meaning, like if you're just
like
an observer. Yes.
Outside observer. So if inappropriateness is happening in the family, the child doesn't know what to do with that sexual energy, so they'll project it on other people. How can you tell? Because they're being inappropriate with other people, maybe other peers. They may be masturbating more, or they may be trying to download more pornography, or maybe they're trying to pull each other's panties down or do other inappropriate things. So basically, they're acting out sexually. That's how you could tell. And how does it affect their self-esteem? Because now they've been labeled by other children and other people as nasty or perverted or bad, or some sort of a negative label is put on them. And what's happening is that they need intervention, and they need uh, somebody to talk to help them get their boundaries back in order, which, by the way, is really hard to do for a therapist if the family's acting out. So what's a therapist going to do if mom and dad are grinding on other people in front of their children, and they're having sex parties at the home, and they're getting drunk, and there's lots of drug, sex, and rock and roll, and nudity, and so on. It's hard for the therapist um, to intervene, because that is the blueprint that the child is getting. So obviously, the best is to psychoeducate parents that this is not a good idea, that they cannot overstimulate their children sexually without having some pretty dire consequence on their child, including child protective services getting involved, and the school system getting involved, and other parents being up in arms around it. So again, it goes back to the initial role modeling. And so if that's not really intact, because a lot of families are not appropriate, the next best thing is to teach, psychoeducate children in school about these kinds of things in age appropriate language, age appropriate discussions, so that they can understand boundaries and safety, and how to reach out for help, and what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate, and teach them how to distinguish between this, and to take them out of a feeling of powerlessness in these situations, and empower them to talk and seek help and seek protection. And so that's always been my plan, is to get the mind map into the school system, so that we could have better outcomes for our children, that they don't have to be subject to the blueprint of their family of origin. Some children are more fortunate than others. Some people have wonderful parents with good boundaries, and so on, and others not so much. And sometimes when the not so much child with no great boundaries gets into a school system with children who have better boundaries, it's kind of freaky for that child who hasn't been exposed to all of this to now suddenly be exposed to threats and bullying and so on, to do sexual acts, to be coerced into sexual acts that they haven't even thought of, really. I hope that answers the question. It's also important to get intervention immediately, so the PTSD gets resolved, because if the PTSD doesn't get resolved, then it's in the state of, again, anxiety and avoidance behaviors and phobias, and children can develop all kinds of phobias around this, and regress back into clingy behaviors. They don't want to go to school. They hang on to their mom or their dad. They have a fear response to even entering the school, and there's a big regression that goes on, because if people don't feel safe, they cannot grow, if that makes sense. Okay. Any other questions? Boy, people like to ask questions in the chat room.
I know.
Yeah,
We've got them spoiled. We've got them spoiled. But yes, there is a question, and actually this interests me. It's a good question. How can these behaviors manifest differently in boys versus girls?
That's a great question. I don't have a brilliant answer, but I think it's similar to that. But it might even be worse with boys, because if they're acting out on other little girls, that might put them in the creepy department, okay? If they're school children with lewd, lascivious conduct toward other children of the opposite sex, it might taint them even worse. Okay, so now we've got creepy little Johnny or creepy little Harry trying to look up the skirt of Betty, or, try to peek under the bathroom stall or whatever, or touch her in an inappropriate way. So sometimes it scars them, because in the mind of the adults, they're a future child molester or rapist or something like that. So that's how it affects the self-esteem of the child, is these things have to be resolved quickly. Yes, children are curious. Yes, they're gonna be interested in other children and their genitalia, of course. It's just that they need to have rules and roles and boundaries so that they can understand um, how to conduct themselves in environments that are built to keep children safe. And I encourage schools to very much take responsibility for any breach of safety um, amongst the students due to lack of supervision and so on, and really get their act together in terms of monitoring and communication. And again, I'm all about psychoeducation. If only they would give some courses in what to do, what to expect, why this is happening, take the fault off of them, why it's not their fault, they're not the cause of this. A 5-year-old child who is acting out sexually onto another child is not the cause. This child is acting out because they have seen something in the environment that they are now blueprinting after. And then the sad thing is that they get tagged as bad children, dirty children, lewd children, and that's not fair. So children are too young to be pigeonholed like that. They have to have some semblance of parental or some kind of intervention here so that they can understand about this acting out of their sexuality, so that they don't later get labeled or immediately get labeled as sick and perverted. So what happens as a result of these defense mechanisms is that they can stunt people's growth, that their world gets smaller and smaller. They don't want to go out. They don't want to mingle among friends. They project onto other children that they're not safe. So a lot of parents don't know what to do at this juncture. What do you do? Keep the kid in the school system, pull them out. Some parents pull their children out of the school system. It's just that if you put them in another school system, that's great. Maybe the child will have a better association with the new school, but ultimately we still have to psychoeducate our children about this kind of behavior. I'm talking about peer to peer. I'm not talking about a teacher molesting a child, or even an older, much older child molesting a much younger child. We're talking about pretty much peer to peer, or grade school level to grade school level. And a lot more of this is happening than we might know. And in my practice, I'm seeing this happening. And it breaks the parents' heart, because children are bonded to their school and their friends, and they don't want to take them out of an environment that's generally been good for them. It's just that when the child is exhibiting behaviors of avoidance and anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder, nightmares, and flashbacks to the event, um, it's almost better if the child not return to that school. And then what do you do with the child that perpetrated that behavior, that person needs some intervention. And then it becomes a breakdown in communication between the parent and the school, a breakdown in the person's behavior and psyche, and more anxiety, more depression, more sleepless nights, and then the whole family gets infected, and then they try to right the wrong legally and change school systems and all kinds of things. So if you look at panel number 6, that's the breakdown panel. And how does it all break down? Everybody's breaking down. So the schools would be wiser, instead of waiting for these things to break down, because they are already breaking down. I bet in just about every single school, there's something inappropriate going on in the locker room, in the bathroom, and somewhere. And there might be a cloud of threat. If you tell my teacher, I will do this, or if you do that, I'll kill your pet, or like nasty things like that, nasty threats. And that's what keeps people silent. And that's sad, because the last thing you want your child to do is stay silent. You need them to talk, you need them to come forth and communicate their fears, and communicate the bullying that they're experiencing, and the inappropriateness of it all. And that's what they need to be talking about. They can't be locked in a fear box. If you don't participate in this, we will kill your parents. I mean, I've heard just about everything in my treatment room, and it's very sad, because children will buy in. So if you have read my book, Be the Cause: Healing Human Disconnect, you will come upon a statement in there that says, identify it, not with it. So when children hear these threats, they identify the threat as real. They don't identify it as a lie and manipulation. And so they become scared, and then they continue to be victims to the abuse, because they fear that if they don't allow for this to continue, something really, really bad is going to happen to them, or worse, their family, specifically their parents. So it becomes a really ugly system gone wrong. And starting with the cause, which is mom, dad, family of origin, it's really, really important that parents get their sexuality in alignment, because that ultimately is the blueprint. So if you want your child to be acting out, then easy, act out. Do things that are violating boundaries, that are overstimulating your children. Of course, I'm being facetious. I'm saying don't do that, because if you do, again, that sexual energy is just too much. It's too uncontained for the child. So, any other questions? Do you
I,
guys want to call in?
No
Okay.
calls yet, so please call in 323-524-2599. Ask your question directly to Dr. Judy. Get on the couch. But we do have a question from a teacher, and I'm assuming he or she, so we'll say either one, because this probably can go with no matter who's asking. But how should educators and counselors approach these issues when dealing with families?
I think it has to be kind of like a policy, a school policy. Psychoeducation needs to be part of it. If you're a teacher, especially the one that just asked the question, there's a way to get the mind map into the school system, so that parents, children, teachers, principals, administrators could all understand that there's got to be an educational aspect to this. My favorite way to intervene is prevention. But if you're a teacher, which I know you are because you're asking the question and you're stating that you are, you want to encourage communication so that that student can come to you safely. But again, it's not that easy because the staff has to be supportive of you, or else you'll sound weird. Like, hey, students, if you're ever molested by one of your peers, just speak up and come to me. That just sounds kind of out of context, doesn't it? A little bit odd. But if there's a program that addresses these things, like what to do, how to be a, a, a person with a voice rather than a victim, then we've got something that everybody can back, and that it's like it's just something that's just got to be taught, because better to be taught than to be experienced and then uh, break down into chaos and build defenses and ultimately have a big PTSD, panic attack, breakdown, and have child protective services involved and police involved. So, I'd rather be on the preventative psychoeducational end of it. And if you have any suggestions, since you are working in the school, how do you think this should be approached? And I'd love you to call me and give me suggestions, and give everybody who's listening suggestions of how do you think the school should approach this? Because I'm not in the school system.
So,
Anybody that's the person who wrote in, or anybody want to call in and address that? How could it be delicately brought in as an educational approach to help something that is occurring? It's not like it's rarely occurring, it's occurring. And it's occurring probably more than we are able to recognize, because there are a lot, don't forget, there's a lot of bullying going on, a lot of threats. Don't tell, don't tell, don't tell. If you tell, bad things will happen to you. So we're only hearing a small percentage of what is going on. So this is occurring. Now, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do? Wait till the parents get really angry and sue the school system? So, there are obvious things that a school system can do. I guess they can monitor the bathrooms better. They can have more cameras. But again, it's the psychoeducation, I believe, that's going to be the most effective, because people have to know what's happening, why this is happening, what to do if it does happen, how to not be the victim and fall into the shame and the guilt and the dirty labels associated with it, because there's that self-esteem thing that somebody asked about. You don't want your child feeling like they're a victim and feeling dirty and feeling like they've been violated. It's not fair, nor do you want a child that is the violator. You want that child to understand that they're overstimulated and they cannot copy what they're seeing in the home. And I know that this might cause a clash with the parents, but then again, um, if the parents not doing their job, then the kid still deserves safety and protection within the home. So either way, we have to protect our children and give them a voice and give them easy access to the educators, so that they can intervene quickly, and give them easy access to education, so that they can understand that these things happen. It's not their fault, and don't keep it inside, and don't fall under the threat of, if you tell, we will hurt you. That's just bullying, isn't it? So any other questions in the chat room, or does anybody want to call in? Anyone who has had the unfortunate experience of this, any school administrators out there listening who don't know what to do because they know that it's happening and the school chooses to shove it under the carpet. I think we're going to get more and more cases of this, and it's going to turn legal. It is turning legal already. It's turning ugly, and this could all be prevented. And if we just had a wiser school system that didn't get as defensive, but put some money into prevention, I think societally we would be much, much better off. So let's move to panel number 7, 8, 9. So we're going to use this metaphorically as a paradigm shift out of this control, out of these threats. So in order to have a paradigm shift, you have to know that the threats are not going to hurt you. It's like a child saying that I'm going to hurt your family if you tell, doesn't have a lot of real power. It's got power in the situation because it makes the other child scared, but what are they going to do? You see, there's not a really, usually not a real threat there. And so the paradigm shift is understanding the truth. And the truth is that you are not a victim. You don't have to stand for this. You don't have to stay silent. You can get your power back. You don't have to affiliate with people who make you sick and coerce you into things that you don't want to be doing. You have a right to receive education from your family and correct role modeling from your family and your school system. You have a right to be legally protected by all of this. And so if you look at panel number 8, this is the recoding process. And so when people are stuck in panel number 3 with I'm scared, the world isn't safe, I'm filthy, I'm dirty, I'm guilty, I'm a victim, I'm not good enough, or something like that, we can recode that garbage, those horrible core beliefs, into something healthy, where you elevate yourself. You are powerful. You do have a voice. You have a better a DNA role model of a structure. You do know where to find that better DNA role model structure, even if it's not in your family of origin. And so that is up the evolutionary ladder that I talk about in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. And as you know, I have a video out called Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. If you need this video because you're healing from narcissistic abuse, reach out to me. We package the video with sessions from our team. So please find out about that. And also understand that it is very narcissistic of parents to act lewdly, is that a word? To act in lewd ways around their children and then ruin their sexual blueprint. It's absolutely, because my definition of narcissism is the system gone wrong, where the parents put their own needs, in this case, their own need to have fun, act out, be loose, party, have no boundaries. They put those needs, drug, sex, rock and roll is how I like to refer to it, before the needs of the child to have safety and role modeling and appropriateness and Asian stage appropriateness. So that is an example of narcissism. Parents who are acting out inappropriately in front of their children because there's a lack of empathy there. They don't understand the impact on the child, nor do they care to understand the impact until the child starts acting out and gets a call, and they get a call from the school system or another parent. Hey, you're a little boy, you're a little girl, your child has violated my child, and then it turns ugly. And it doesn't need to be. We just need information. We need better role models. So those of you who are parents or want to be parents, please learn the mind map and learn attachment theory and know how important it is to give your children the nourishment, the boundaries, the mirroring, the attunement, according to Dr. John Bowlby, attachment theorist. In order to have a human psyche that's healthy, we need psychological nutrients of caring mother, caring father, intact family, boundaries, and all of the elements that make up mental health, which I talk quite a bit about in all the videos that I've created and the Be the Cause book. So The 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗃 book, the PDF, is free, so you can just request it, and then you can order it off of Amazon if you actually want the hard copy. And then, of course, the videos are just a really easy, succinct way to psychoeducate yourself about childhood wounds and narcissistic abuse. So please avail yourself of all the material that I have so carefully put together over the years, because some people don't want to be in therapy. They don't want to spend gobs of money on therapy, and they can actually learn the material in a very simple fashion. The video, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, comes with a journal, obviously the PDF of the book, and session by session exploration of narcissistic abuse, how to tell that, how to tell if you've been abused, and then how to heal from it so that you don't pass this on multi-generationally to your children, the next generation. So that's another issue here, is you don't want to blueprint unhealth to the next generation. So I think that as a society, we're all responsible. Parents, educators, the school system, we're all responsible to caretake our children and create healthy, safe environments for them. And if at the very least, a way that a child can ask for help without feeling guilty and shameful, and of course, to feel supported in their reaching out for help. So any other questions, any other comments, any other anything? Call-ins?
We don't have a call in, but we do have a question
Okay.
about long-term effects. And it says, I'm scared that the environment I grew up in will affect me for the rest of my life, especially in my relationships. How can I work through these fears, avoiding repeating these patterns in my future?
I'm telling you, do the mind map, and I'm not just running a sales pitch. I've been doing this for 30 years, and you've got to get to the root cause of it, because then it creates, as you said, a bunch of distortions in future relationships where there's no trust, where you're repeating sexual inappropriateness with other people, boundarylessness, and you've got to really peel the layer of the onions, is what the mind map does, and get to the root cause so that you can actually shift your mind out of being a victim and put yourself in a power position where you have knowledge and you haven't bought into this idea that there's no hope or no help, or that you have to keep falling victim to being an abused person. Or could be that you're acting out on other people and you're being the abuser. Either way, either you're identifying with the aggressor and you're abusing, or you're being abused by people because you're repeating the what the Freud. That's what I call it. You've got to stop repeating the what the Freud. So I'm saying take the journey. Take the journey. And if you can't afford it, call me. I'll make sure that you get a video or something of a discount so that you can do this and learn it, because traditional therapy will just take you on a I don't know what kind of journey, but they don't usually have a plan. They don't usually have a method to their madness. It's just session after session, open-ended therapy. For those of you who know me, I'm not a big fan of traditional therapy where there's no plan. So the mind map is the plan. Okay, any other questions?
We do have one more, and it's more. It sounds like it's more about cultural, and it says, "My family's cultural background made it hard to talk about sexuality at all, let alone what was happening at home. How do I reconcile these cultural factors with the need to heal from what I went through?"
Okay, great question. Number one, you see that there's a limitation that cultural taboos don't permit you to talk. Now, the sad thing is these cultural taboos that don't permit you to talk keep you stuck. So just by knowing this is a big step. The next step is for you to go against your culture. So I'll have a saying in my book, I think, or one of my videos, just because something is culturally correct, it doesn't make it mentally healthy. So you've got to choose between your taboos of your culture or your mental health. And I always choose mental health. After all, I'm a psychologist, and even if I wasn't, I'd always choose mental health because we don't want our culture to limit us. We want our culture to help us grow and enhance ourselves all the time. Pick mental health. So that's it. You have to break through the culture. Just simple. It's simple. Just call me or a therapist or somebody that knows mind map, which would be my team. And then we will go into the guilt and the shame and the stuff that keeps you stuck in the cultural trap in this case. Because being in the cultural trap is not going to heal you. Okay, so if there aren't any more questions, please, for those of you who are teachers, principals, parents, role models, make it easy and accessible, educate your children so that they can talk about this. They don't have to go under the radar and act out, and even if they do, they're children. They deserve to be heard. They deserve to be helped. So let's not label them. Let's help them and get them the proper boundaries and the voice and the psychological care that they need so they neither perpetrate onto others or become victim to these perpetrations. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in, and feel free to call the Psychological Healing Center and get the necessary help you need so that you're not stuck. Good night, everyone.